Good evening and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It is match day. It's a late kickoff. St Johnstone against our beloved Celtic. 5:45 kickoff, but I'm joined tonight by Ryan Pearce. And between us, we're going to try and talk a little bit about the team, the lineups, what we can expect from the game, and if we get time, we'll even try and talk a little bit about the upcoming Dortmund match on Tuesday. Paul John Dykes, as I'm sure you'll understand, is currently at Grace's Irish Bar in Glasgow. He's been joined by Charlie Mulgrew and young Paddy McLean making his live performing debut in Scotland, which is fantastic. So sincerely hope that Paul John, all of the Acsom team, and certainly everyone who was lucky enough to get a ticket for that venue are having a great time tonight. But for us, for myself and Ryan, we've drawn I wouldn't say it's the short straw, Ryan. I would say we're quite privileged. We get to cover the game tonight and hopefully see us keep our 100% record. How much are you looking forward to this one?
I'm looking forward to 100% record. I think this breaks the all-time record if we get a clean sheet. Which would be delightful. Yeah, which would be delightful in that as well. I definitely wouldn't say we have the short straw. I love actually doing the pre-post game. I feel like we talk a lot about the interesting stories in and around Celtic. Sometimes we beat them like a dead horse. But I mean, I'm guilty as charged in that. I can, talk until I'm green in the face about it. But now we get to talk about a game that's happening right now. And news is happening right now. And even little things like the team sheet coming out, it's always storylines and speculation. So this is where it starts getting excited.
Absolutely. And a great point. Let's talk about the lineup first of all. So I'll run through it and then we can talk about some of those key decisions that have been made tonight. Yeah. There was some speculation that Brendan might field a few of the subs, maybe a few players to try and keep an eye on Tuesday. Different viewpoints on that. I'm very much, I think, we should always be trying to play our best team where possible, within the boundaries of being sensible, of course. But I also think there are certain players that need minutes, they need sharpness, and you want them firing no cylinders. Momentum's so key. So let's run through it at the moment. So we've got Schmeichel in goals, as expected. Back four of Johnson, Trusty, and for the injured Carter Vickers, we'll touch on that. Liam Scales and Greg Taylor. We then have our captain, Callum McGregor, and he's joined in the midfield by Bernardo and Engels. So no Rio Hatate in the starting lineup tonight, although there's been some views that may be our strongest central midfield partnership. Interesting to hear what Ryan's thoughts are there. Out wide, we've got the established wingers of Kuhn and Maeda, and we're playing Kyogo Furuhashi up front. On the bench, we have Sinisalo, Ida, Valle, Yang, McCowan, Nawrocki, Hatate, Forrest, and Ralston. Conspicuous by his absence, no Lewis Palma on the bench tonight. Not sure if that's an injury or if it's just a reaction to poor form so far this season. So what do you make of that, Ryan? Lots to digest there. I think first of all, we didn't expect Carter Vickers to play. Some pictures and some footage of him at training with a boot on his leg, but otherwise, as you expected.
Yeah, as I expected. I think it's always a little bit interesting when you see a left-footed player on the right side, even though you see right-footed players on the left side a lot. I think it's just because there's so many less left-footed players in the game of football and in the world that you kind of scratch your head and say, is he going to do all right there? I think it'd be good to see him because that means that we kind of have now, a trusted three that can fill those two spots the same way that, Cal Mack is a shoe-in, obviously, that you're looking at, Engels, Hatate, and Bernardo as your three that cycle through those two positions. So I'm definitely interested in seeing how he does tonight, especially because we don't know if CCV is going to be ready for Tuesday. And I'm nervous about that as well because I don't want to jump too far ahead. We'll be talking about Tuesday at some point, but we do have a history recently of players coming back from injury in big games and not performing to the standard we want. In fact, actually being backfiring. I mean, let's talk about Callum McGregor at Ibrox, wasn't his best performance. For the rest of the team, I think it's great to see him out there. I hope Celtic, like most modern day clubs, especially at this level, Champions League club, have the right data in place that they can understand the player's recovery, where they're at, who needs a rest, who needs to kick on. And if they're at a position where they don't necessarily need a rest, I actually think continuity in playing is the right thing to do. So it's nice to see all those players out there. But as I think John said earlier this week, hopefully we're 2-3, 4-0 up, and at halftime or at the 50, 60th minute mark, we can bring some other players on and rest everyone and be ready for Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that might be key, and I've seen a few of the comments coming in, hoping that we get off to a strong start tonight, maybe get to a few goals up, and then we have the option of bringing on, say, a Luke McCowan, Adam Ida to get some more minutes and maybe some more sharpness. And I think it is important that we get minutes for some of the players, because we won't just rely on the first 11 for Tuesday. We will rely on guys coming off the bench. McCowan could have a part to play late in the game. Ida, as we know, is a different option to Keogh, depending on how the game goes. He could be dependent on. So I think it's important that, well, I'm very much in favour of having our strongest 11 in every game, irrespective of the competition. I always think, the reason we wanted quality depth in the squad is so that we can relieve these players after they've done their job. So really, really keen to see a couple of the guys coming off the bench tonight and getting a few goals. Just talking about that midfield three. So obviously we've got McGregor, Bernardo, and Engels. They finished the game against Falkirk last week, and I think a lot of people observed that the team seemed to have a little bit more discipline, a little bit more balance with that three, maybe due to the role that Bernardo plays. Engels, as we know, has absolutely hit the ground running. He's in a real purple patch at the moment. And Callum McGregor looks as though he's having his... How many career renaissances has he had up to this point? He seems to be thriving since giving up international football and really reveling in that role. Obviously, the one thing he sacrifices, Hatate brings a degree of innovation when he plays. He is a bit more of a risk taker. He'll try the pass that's got those fine margins of being successful. He is quite offensive. We know he can score goals. We've seen him do it. But any concerns about him being left out tonight, or are you quite comfortable with the selection?
I personally think, especially the way that Brendan Rodgers likes to play, I think this is our best midfield trio right now. I think, going on McGregor's renaissance, having someone like Engels, and I still believe that Engels has a higher ceiling than Matt O'Reilly and kind of came in at a better spot. But I do think Matt O'Reilly today is probably a better player. He was not as quick as Engels seems to be. So Engels covers a lot of ground, and that, does a lot of the duty that McGregor doesn't need to do. Bernardo is a lot more pragmatic. He's great in the press as well. And in fact, I even was scratching my head at the end of the transfer window and said, we never really got a replacement number 6 who's backing up McGregor. I would say Bernardo is probably that guy that can slot in that position. Even Rio said in one of his press conferences, I think it was the one where it might've been taken out of context, where he said he was trying to play to get into the Premier League. He talked about how the differences between Ange and Brendan's style is Ange wanted them to be a lot more vertical. Get the ball, get forward, get the ball, get forward. And that suited his play perfectly, because he had to pick up. He didn't have to think. It was pure instinct, and it was go. And I think he is still a fantastic player. We're still in a position where it could be 0-0 at 60th minute. They could be playing the low block well. We've seen teams do that at times. We've seen times where Celtic are not firing on all cylinders. We can bring off Rio Hatate off the bench and have someone that's going to bring a little bit of that X factor. That's exactly in the position we wanted to be in. So, yeah, I'm happy with the lineup. I think this is our best team right now in terms, with the exception of CCV. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this trio plays from the start. And I suspect if things go well, I suspect this will be the same starting trio going into the game on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's not a bad option to have, is it? Having a player like Hatate on the bench and able to come on is similar to what we said with Ida, McCowan, even James Forrest, with the way he's played so far this season and towards the end of last season as well. Keen to get some comments up and get your thoughts on the lineup and how the match is going to go. So we'll kick off with George Nicholson. Pardon me, I don't have my trusty pen, so I'm having to use my fingers tonight. So apologies if I promise not to inadvertently ban anyone except Paddy Lavery, who knows he's on a sticky wicket with me most of the time anyway. George Nicholson, welcome to the channel. Hail, hail all. Let's get this game done and dusted as early as possible. Yep, I think a lot of people sharing that sentiment. Let's try and get our business done as early and keep the momentum going. Joseph McGonigal talks about centre-back, 2 left-footed players at centre-back, and trusty we trust. It was only a matter of time before we started seeing some of the quips like that. But it's a fair point. 2 left-footed players, will that upset the balance? We'll need to wait and see. Barry Sullivan comes in. Hail, hail, troops. Right back at you, and you come in again with a good point. complete focus today. 3 goals, 3 points, and a clean sheet. That'll do nicely. Absolutely, I'd take that all day long. Joe Hamilton comes in. Hail, hail, boys and girls. Brendan is going all in. Yeah, I think some people did expect to maybe see a few changes, maybe with an eye on Tuesday. But I think, what we are seeing is that the league is always going to be an area of focus for Brendan, who I think Ryan wants to win everything anyway. Brendan doesn't strike me as a manager who doesn't take any particular competition, without the absolute commitment and seriousness. So that's a great point from Joe. Joseph McGonigal comes in. Hail, hail from a dull Plymouth. That's a rarity. We usually hear how wonderful Plymouth is in terms of weather. Well, Joseph, Glasgow, I can tell you, I think there's a glimmer of sunshine up there, but it's been a little bit grey and a little bit dull today here as well. Slabbering Cabbage comes in. I sense an annihilation today, troops 5 or 6-0. Hey, you take that, absolutely. And last point, just from Brown Warrior on what we were speaking about. I think all three can rotate comfortably in midfield today, as and when required. Well, look, that's the point of having the squad depth and the quality of squad depth. I think, in maybe the last season and a half, we've not really had that strength on the bench, and we've not really had those options. It's in fact in certain games where we've brought players off the bench, Ryan, we've seen a markable drop in quality. Yeah. And I think now what we are seeing, okay, last week we made a lot of changes and we toiled a little bit, but we buy his first game, trust his first game. It was against a very, a very well structured and well laid out Falkirk, must be said. So I think we do have better options coming off the bench today. One point I'm keen to get your viewpoint on is Kyogo and Ida. Now they're both scoring goals this season. I think, based on his own high standards, Kyogo is probably not quite hitting the levels that we would expect him to, but maybe that's just based on what we've seen over the past couple of years, but he is still getting amongst the goals. Ida now looks like he's starting to find his feet. Great goal in Europe. Another goal there after, as the game wore on, which I think is great, and ultimately that's what you want your strikers to do. What's your thoughts on the two of them? Who do you currently prefer? Do you think Kyogo's still our number one?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly, I'm going to make a contradictory statement because I think Ida's been doing fantastic. I think he's kind of starting to make the claim that he could be, the preferred choice up front. But I think we need to get that thought out of our heads as Celtic supporters. And I think that's the kind of the message that they're sharing as well. And I think that's a message that Brendan's sending to them is that we are going to have striker by committee this season. And there will be certain games where one starts, one doesn't start based on the situation, based on form. And they know they can do their job. They can put in the effort for 60 minutes and you're going to have another quality person coming in to replace them after the fact. The contradictory statement is I don't think Ida is still yet firing on all cylinders. And we're already making the argument, is he going to be there? I still think he's got another few weeks of getting that poor preseason that he had under his belt where he might have been downing tools a little bit with Norwich, didn't come in and kind of get to that same boost that these players got from the trip to the US and the other preseason games. So I think he can kind of go there. But I think one of the reasons why Kyogo is starting now and why I think it'll probably be Kyogo going into to the next game on Tuesday is a bold statement, but I think you can make the argument that the front three as a combination is the best counter-pressing forward line in Europe right now, and making that claim. And I think that's something that Ida needs to add to his game, and I think that's how we play. So I think that's probably why the reason Brendan has those three out there. Give him 60 minutes as a trio, run that press, build that confidence, kind of almost like a bounce game of playing in that. Get those things into their muscle memory and go into next week. And so for me, Kyogo continues to get the nod, but I think at any point in the season, you're going to have purple patches. You're going to have times when your player's not firing on all cylinders, and what luck we have that we have those two to pick from. And even put in Maeda into the mix. I think he's our solid number 3 striker. What a great position Celtic are in right now.
It's good. I think it's about pace. It's about movement. It is that pressing, which I love to see. And I think there was a sense of anticipation about that front three going into Europe in particular, because sometimes it can be hard to judge the front three when we play domestically, when teams are sitting back and they're inviting that pressure on. So it's much harder to find those gaps that I think all three of those players thrive on. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I think a player like Ida is so valuable because he can draw the back line out a bit and create those gaps for the overlap and almost play that little bit more of a target man role, whereas Kyogo is very much a player who likes to run onto the ball, likes to run into the pockets of space. Whereas in Europe, there are going to be gaps. There are going to be gaps because we're going to be under pressure, so we need our defenders to really be on top of the game. But that counter press, as you say, is so vital in trying to open up those opportunities. The concern, obviously, with this Celtic team is we even saw in the first European game is that there are very fine margins in terms of defensive mistakes.
Yep.
And if we are wasteful in terms of taking chances, we will get punished. So it's really, really important that we keep the sharpness. But yeah, looking forward to seeing hopefully all three maybe get amongst the goals or contributing towards the goals tonight. So that would be fantastic. Again, let us know in the comments your thoughts and your predictions on tonight's game. Strong lineup, as we've said. I'll run through just for balance, I'll run through the St Johnstone lineup, so bear with me. So I can go for St Johnstone. We have Sinclair, then we have Raymond, Cameron, who captains the side tonight, Sanders and Nielsen, Clark, Carey, Wright, Smith, Sprangler, and Kirk. Notice from the St Johnstone socials, there was a bit of concern that there was no Holt playing, but I think, and some mentions that it could be Kirk's last game, just for anyone that's got an interest in St Johnstone. I confess that I'm not too familiar with St Johnstone lineup. What I am familiar with is St Johnstone's position on the table. They are currently sitting 10th, just above the drop places, although it is very early season. They're currently a point ahead of Kilmarnock and 2 points ahead of managerless Hearts at the moment. They have taken 1 win and 1 draw and 4 losses from 6 games, which when you compare it to, at the moment, the league leaders, which is Aberdeen, who are currently have a 6 out of 6 record. So the second best team in Scotland are currently sitting as the first best team in Scotland. We need to change that tonight, Ryan. Right?
Exactly. I mean, I think it's great to have a little bit of that competition there. I would love to see one of the teams. I know they say split the old firm, but we all know what that means at this point in time. I think the frustration being is that team is rarely consistent. It's it was Aberdeen and it was Hearts, and then you start seeing Kilmarnock up there for a little bit, and St Johnstone had their time in the sun a few seasons ago. We need to see for this league to kind of get a little bit more consistent and competitive, especially when you get into Europe and getting other teams contributing to the coefficient. You need a team like Hearts or a team like Aberdeen to be consistently at least in the top 6. So it's a bit of a shame. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to cry seeing Hearts at the foot of the table, but for the game as a whole, it is. I think it's one of the negative sides of this league is that you are either competing for Europe or you're competing for relegation, and it brings in a lot of negativity to how they play their season and what they're playing for, and it doesn't allow teams as much to build up that season over season growth. But as Celtic supporters, that's not necessarily something we need to worry about. I'm just licking my lips and looking forward to the game coming up. I'm glad it's at Celtic Park, but mid-October with Aberdeen, that's going to be an amazing fixture to watch.
Yeah, hopefully first against second there.
Yeah. I'm question for you though. I want to get your opinion. I know you're usually in the hot seat asking the questions, filling in for Paul John, but I'm just seeing this come up on one of the feeds. It was a little bit curious with Borussia playing yesterday. Celtic being moved for a TV fixture later in the day. It doesn't seem like we're getting the help that we should be getting for these fixtures. I want to get your thought on that.
Yeah, it's I did see that, and we could go down the conspiracy route. We could go down this lack of support from our governing body, as it were. Like I think again, we could even just put it down to sheer lack of foresight, lack of structure, and lack of seeing the bigger picture from our footballing organisation. I think ultimately, everything will be driven by TV. Right, that's been the case for so many years, and it's something I think we just have to absorb. This again, I think, points to why it's so important we've got a strong squad, because if we are not going to have enough rest time, if players aren't going to have enough time to recuperate before these very, very tough Champions League fixtures, and let's face it, there is not going to be an easy game. There's not going to be any free hits in the Champions League, and a lot of people have indicated that Dortmund, being I think certainly when the group was announced, being the favourite to top the group, my view is that no, I want to see Celtic go and compete and really try and try and make an impact against every team. So it would be nice to have a little bit of additional rest. But ultimately, the one thing I've noticed with this Brendan Rodgers team is the level of fitness looks a lot better than we've seen in recent seasons. Players look like they can run right up until the 90th minute. I was really concerned with the way that the team started the season. We were so high intensity at the start of games, and you're worried that, is that going to start to drop off at 60 minutes? Then we have to turn to the bench, and that can sometimes upset the balance and the intensity level. But I think we've never been ones to sort of shake our heads at a challenge or face up to adversity, even if it's coming from the governing body. So look, conspiracy might be, lack of foresight, lack of planning, probably. Do I care? No. This is Celtic. We'll take whatever they throw at us. So
yeah, I completely agree with you. So I'd be curious what the stats are. Might put Alan Morrison on that one. What are the stats of teams coming in with less rest? I'm sure. I know as a Celtic supporter going to Europe, there's been many a times going, oh, this is going to be our game. They had less rest than us. They're traveling, and then they look like Barcelona and do ping around some passes, and we lose the game down 2-0. So that's always my biggest fear going into a European game, especially at home against a team that does not have a known quantity. But yeah, it's frustrating. But I think as you said, their fitness levels look better, but I don't think it's anything to do with their regime or anything like that. I think it's just the style that we play, the way Brendan manages games. I think you and I joked about it the last time I was on about, the days of Ronnie Dahlia, and just towards the end of games, they were just knackered because they were running around like headless chickens for 45, 50, 60 minutes, and they had nothing in the tank. These players are being managed a lot better, and it's definitely shown in how they can play on the pitch, how they can manage and transition their strategy in a game, and how that makes them available for more games throughout the season. So that's fantastic to see.
Absolutely. Just want to get you a couple of thoughts on a few of the other players that have come through. So there was a lot of speculation that young McCown might come in and play a part today. There was when we might start. What have you made of him? Because he was a player that was kind of come in without really the fanfare, but he seems to have really got the fan base on side. He looks like he's thriving on every minute at the club. Is he one you'd like to see tonight, and what have you made of him so far?
I think he's got the quintessential story that every one of us kind of in the back of their head thought we would be doing, at some point in our lives. There was a running joke. I'm celebrating my 40th birthday later this year, but there's a joke with me and my friends about when does someone like myself actually feel old. And I think it was when you turn 35 and know that's usually when players retire in football, because you have this dream that you're a 33-year-old and you're playing on the park, and all of a sudden someone's going to come in and see, I'll get that guy in the team, which is obviously never going to happen. Yeah. So for him, a little bit later in the game, we're so used to seeing players come in when they're young, and I think he's at 26 now. 26. I said this after his press conference. He said all the right things without it seeming like he was being coached to say all the right things. Absolutely. He seems genuinely happy to be here. I feel like he's here to soak it in, but to make the most of it. And he's played well when he's come on. So I think a lot of us will hold our hands up and say, when we in the past have bought players in from another Scottish team, probably with the exception of someone like Scott Brown, who came in with such fanfare, and especially that price point. There's a little bit of, sometimes we can be a little bit of snobbery in the sense of, okay, we're not buying someone with, a last name and from a league that's, it's going to move us in the right direction. Who is this? So I was the same way when we got Stuart Armstrong. I was the same way when we got Paul Hartley. I was the same way when we got Barry Robson. And those all three examples of players that have all turned out to be fantastic servants for the club and made a big impact, especially on Europe. So I hope he continues to progress. I think having him in there, and it will be interesting to see, because I personally believe that Rio has a role to play in this team. I rate him as a player. I think this is the last season we see him in the Celtic shirt. So question is how does someone like McGowan kind of come in and make that role in the team his own? Is that something he can do? Can he play more Brendan style? That's all things I want to be seeing this season, and I support him if he can do it.
He's got a fantastic opportunity, absolutely. Just on the point about getting older, and I'm still only 39, Ryan, and have been for the last 4 years. But but as quarterback punt, really, this talks to my sentiments. You talk about, you're growing up, you're watching Celtic, you're coming through, and you fantasize about being part of the team, part of the player. I always wanted to be part of the Martin O'Neill team and play alongside guys like Henrik and Chris Sutton and Lubo Moravchik and Petrov, etc. Now I find myself looking at Brendan Rodgers and thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind. I'm at that age now where I'm thinking, yeah, I could. That's when you know you're getting old, when you think, I wonder, is there still opportunity for me to go and be a manager now? The player dream is gone. It's finished. It's often
just don't go down the championship manager rabbit hole. It has ruined many lives. So stay away.
Absolutely. No, I like my marriage too much, and I'm quite sure doing this is one thing, but yeah, football manager would just kill me now. But I do dabble occasionally. Let's get some of your predictions then. So match kickoff is rapidly approaching. It's a chance for us to keep our 100% record in the league. We can, I think by virtue of goal difference, I think we are well ahead of Aberdeen. Let me just double check on goal difference. Yeah, we are currently 14 to Aberdeen's 8. So 3 points will put us firmly at the top of the league, where I think we belong. Let me get your predictions in the comments, but I'll come to you, Ryan, first of all. Predictions for tonight.
I'm going to say 4-0. I'm going to say I'm going to predict we do 1 in the first half, 3 in the second half.
1 in the first half, 3 in the second half. Wow.
Yeah, I think we're gonna play well, but we're gonna play pragmatically, and we're gonna break them down in the second half. That's where I see.
I like it. And any indication of scorers? You're going to venture out to play scorers?
I would like to, I don't know. I mean, I think with our front line, I think we're going to see more contributed from Kuhn. I think he's been, I think as Paul John said, and recently his stats say he gets a goal and assist every 45 minutes. So stats would say that he would keep on contributing to that. I would like to see Engels score in the league from open play. So it'd be interesting to see how we do that. But
of course,
yeah. For me, my biggest thing I want to see some of the players that came on in the game previously against Falkirk. I want to see some of them playing with more established first teamers around them. That's why I'm interested in seeing Trusty. I actually want to see Valle come on the 60th minute. And see how he does in this team when he's got more support that he needs, especially with Maeda in front of him. I think that would be the interesting litmus test for him.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, actually. Just before we get to some of the predictions from the comments, he was a player, I think, that came in first game. There was a little bit of intrigue about how a player coming from his kind of background, working with the Barcelona team, playing in La Liga. I think he played in the lower division in Spain, but he was consistently playing, and that's a decent level. We can see what you do, and I think it was a little bit glossed over. He actually got an assist in the game, with some great movement, good work in the air, and what looked like great awareness. So yeah, I'm kind of intrigued to see if he gets some time to see what he can do. I don't think we saw enough against Falkirk to make too much of an informed assessment at this point. A little bit like Trusty as well, who I'm keen to see tonight. But I think, Valle could be one to watch. Let's see if anyone agrees with your predictions, Ryan. In fact, first one up, AR comes in with 4-0 Celtic. Love it, absolutely fantastic. Brown Warrior, a 5-0 pump fest. You get a Scottish term there. Fantastic, I'd take that. And just another one for Brown Warrior, just talking about getting older. Just turned 55 this month, so hopefully a good omen. Yeah, absolutely. And many happy returns, Brown Warrior. Fantastic. Slabbering Cabbage comes in, 5-0 St Johnstone. I'm loving the optimism. Absolutely great. Rob comes in, Rob Lilly, 6-1 Celtic with that team. A Kyogo hat trick. Fabulous. Absolutely, I'd take that all day long. I'm going to go with you, actually. I'm going to go 4-0. But I'm going to go 2 in the first half, 2 in the second half.
There you go. Nice and even. The real prediction is, as you bring up all these comments, how many followers have you accidentally banned? That's the real prediction.
So far none. But bear in mind, we've got a full halftime show and a full, and a full-time show. So exactly. I will do my best not to ban. In fact, I might try and bring up one of Paddy's comments at halftime and see if we can, just to prove that I haven't banned them. Just prove that I haven't banned them. There you go. Okay, kick-off rapidly approaching, so we'll wrap it up there. I just want to say thank you everyone that's joining us on the pre-game. Hopefully you'll join us at half-time and at full-time, where we're celebrating being back at the top of the league. Appreciate everybody putting up with me, but I'm sure you'll agree that Ryan always comes in and like Nicholas Kuhn, he comes in and he's a game changer. Absolutely fantastic. Glad to be working with you. All right, guys, we'll end it there. Everyone enjoy the game. Money hoops. Hail, hail.
Cheers.